Hello, Betty Crosby here. You may think my title is very strange of this posting because I called it Who is Burning All the Meat and Potatoes? But this is referring to a whole slew of fires that have been occurring in food processing plants across the U.S. And so much so that it seems to be establishing not a trend, as has been suggested, that would make it seem a flippant thing that is happening. But it's a pattern. It is an established pattern of fires wiping out food processing plants all across the U.S. And I first heard about this from a site called The Black Conservative, which very interestingly, I can't even find now on YouTube. I think he has been disappeared on YouTube. Any rate, if he hasn't completely disappeared, he's been so close to it, nobody can find him, or at least I couldn't. And but he mentioned, or he did a posting on all of these fires that are occurring in food processing plants as something unusual. And but so I started not being able to find him again at his usual place. I I began a little researching myself to see what other sites had to say about this, and it's so peculiar because no mainstream media has been reporting on it that I know of. If I wish somebody would tell me if they have heard the main news outlets in the U.S. or in Canada talking about this, I'm going to call it a phenomena of these horrific fires that just totally wipe out, most of them do, the capacity of the food processing plant or the food holding plant to function. They're just leave a huge gap in the food supply for Americans and Canadians because of the commerce back and forth between the two. But let's talk about these, and because the first one that there different sites say there have been 18 to 20 of these, massive fires that more or less wipe out the capacity of these food plants to function. But I'm going to list some of them, and you can look them up yourself if anybody is interested in this. It seems to me that we all should be interested in this. It's food that may not be coming to us because of the culmination of these fires. Okay, the first one that I found was on March the 16th, 2022. A massive fire wiped out much of a Walmart fulfillment center in Plainfield, Indiana. Oh, now that's where these huge, tons and tons and tons of food are stored in these fulfillment stations of Walmart. And a massive one destroyed their entire inventory there. That's crazy. And then on March the 22nd, in Herm, Oregon, shearers potato chip plant was decimated by a fire. Usually explosions are occurring in these fires too. They'll burn for a while and then there'll be an explosion of some kind. And then on March the 31st, 2022, an onion processing plant in Texas called Rio Fresh was severely damaged. The Tri-City newspaper reported that the facility was gone after a boiler explosion. Several injured employees are suing the company for permitting a boiler that was inherently dangerously defective product, apparently owned by a third party. Now, this is weird. What would a third party boiler be doing in a food processing plant? You have to wonder who is the third party. And then on April the 11th, 2022, a serious fire broke out at New Hampshire's East Conway beef and pork plant that was so massive it took 16 hours to extinguish. Needless to say, the pork and the beef was well barbecued after that deal. But we will go on. These are just some that I have found and now there are more of these, but maybe some of them were less damaging that were not so much reported in the little teeny town newspapers. And then there was the Taylor Farms in Salinas, California went up in flames. They employed nearly 1,000 people, and the fire chief said about 85% to 95% of the building is a total loss. Now, this stuck in my head because Taylor Farms in Salinas, California. I was born in Salinas, California, but actually know nothing of it really, except it's a huge vegetable growing center, because my family returned to Louisiana, where they had went to California from. My father was trying to get some kind of little business still going, but it didn't work out, so we returned back to Louisiana when I was less than a month old. But I digress. That worried me that, wow, 1,000 people lost their jobs and 85 to 95% of this building was lost. The Taylor Farms are huge. They're huge. They supply so much of the U.S. and Canada with food. But then let's go on. April the 13th, as a Taylor massive fire was burning, an airplane crashed into Idaho's Jim State processing plant. The website for the company describes itself as processing 18,000 acres of potatoes each year. Well, now that's just a whole lot of potatoes gone to rot, or burned in the plant. So, hence my title, The Meat and the Potatoes Are Burning. And go on to April the 18th, 2022, Organbased Azure food processing plant was destroyed by a fire that describes itself as USA's largest independent food producer. It states that basically any liquid product, such as honey, oil, and vinegar, will be out of stock as the result of the damage of this fire. And then did I talk about the airplane that crashed into the Harem Organ Shares potato chip? Well, that's what I'm on now, or we're talking about it now, is that this was the pilot in that plane died. And but there was a lot of questions surrounding it. But let's continue. April the 18th, 2022, Organ-based Azure was destroyed by fire, described itself as USA's largest independent food processor, and told us that we might be, huge shortages of honey and vinegar will be out of stock of the damage and other liquid products. And on April the 22nd, there was another plane crash into a food processing plant, this time in a General Mills plant in Covington, Georgia. And there were 2 people in the plane and both died. This is just such a peculiar thing. And there are 10 others that have happened that are either smaller or I can't find or has gotten such a small reporting that the only people know about it who are the people who live around it. What I would like to point out here is that the only people reporting on this are really small town newspapers that are around the fire and the fires and who report it, but none of the huge media picks it up. And I want to know why. Why haven't they picked it up? It's huge. If you've got up to 20 processing plants, food processing plants being burned and destroyed, willy-nilly it seems, and no huge outcry of a pattern that seems to be occurring, then something is not right. There is saying, and I'm not sure where it first came from, that when detectives look at a crime, and in a sense we are now our own detectives, because we certainly can't depend on the general media, which is really gone off the rails these last 5 years, I would say at least, is that we have to be our own detectives. And the first thing a detective asks when confronted with this dilemma that is happening, this pattern of fire and plane crashes and bizarre happenings with food plants, processing plants. Who benefits? Who benefits from this? Who is interested in destroying more of food products than it's already being decimated through transportation issues and through climate and through the lack of fertilizers and such? Who benefits from this? Who would benefit from a decrease in the population of the Western world through starvation, or through not getting enough calories, or getting the wrong kind of calories, or not having sufficient calories or nourishment to prevent the onslaught of new diseases, which Dr. Fauci and the entire Western medical people tell us, oh, more devastating diseases are on the horizon, worse than COVID and its variants. And so what have we got to look forward to here? Is somebody in some laboratory somewhere getting ready to unleash Ebola, for God's sakes, or something similar? Why is the disease thing now the preoccupation with governments, with the Trudeau government, with the Biden government, with the European Union heads who are looking for and looking to and hoping to bring into all the devastation that a food shortage would bring, people who would be very happy to go into the Great Reset if only they could be fed. I'm forecasting there's going to be a great deal of resistance to this plan, and we will just see how the Canadian people and the American people finally do stand up and demand that there be answers to questions that are so peculiar, so unusual. They speak of something that is so dark that we don't want to face it, but we're going to have to. Okay? So that's my rant, and if I'm disappeared from the sites that I'm on, well, you know why? Because I don't believe this is just a pattern that is just coincidental. I believe it to be deliberate, and we should look into it. Okay? Thank you. Next time. Bye.